The rain came down like heaven was trying to drown the earth. Clara May stood by the flickering lantern in her kitchen, her trembling hands wrapped around a chipped porcelain cup of chamomile tea. The thunder cracked like the devil's whip, rattling the windows of her lonely wooden farmhouse at the edge of Deadwood Ridge. It had been 5 years since her husband, Thomas, rode out to find gold in the mountains and never came back. No one brought his body. No grave to mourn by. Just a blood-stained saddlebag and whispers of a robbery gone wrong. Folks called her a widow, but deep in her bones, Clara felt something wasn't right. Something darker. Suddenly, 3 slow knocks thudded against her back door. Not the front, where decent folks came calling. The back, where secrets slithered in with the shadows. Clara froze. No one knocked at her door after sundown, not since Sheriff Bexley warned her about the escaped gang from Cold Creek Penitentiary. She quietly reached under the table for her father's old Colt revolver, cocked the hammer, and tiptoed to the door. Another knock, heavier this time. She opened it, and there he was, a man collapsed on her porch, soaked in blood and rain, breathing in shallow gasps. His face was half covered in mud, his eyes flickering like candlelight ready to go out. But even through the grime, she saw the gun holstered at his hip. And the brand on his neck, the mark of the Crow Gang, the most wanted outlaws west of the Mississippi. She should have turned him in. She should have let him bleed. But something in his broken whisper stopped her cold. Don't. Let them find me. In that moment, Clara May didn't see a bandit. She saw a man, dying, hunted, alone, just like her heart had been for years. She pulled him inside, and with that one decision, Clara's quiet life shattered like lightning. Across the prairie sky, Clara dragged the man inside with every ounce of strength her slender frame could muster. His boots left muddy streaks on the wooden floorboards, his coat trailing blood that soaked into the rug Thomas had once brought her from Missouri. She bolted the door shut, heart pounding like a war drum. Outside, the wind howled, carrying the distant wail of hounds, search dogs. They were looking for him. She laid him on the couch and rushed to fetch towels and the old whiskey bottle she kept for emergencies. His chest rose in ragged breaths, and when she peeled his coat back, she gasped, a gunshot wound just below his ribs, clean through. Lord in heaven, she whispered. The wound was fresh, likely within the last hour. No doctor in Deadwood Ridge would dare treat a Crow Gang member. Sheriff Bexley would drag him straight to the noose, no questions asked. But Clara, she had already buried her fear the day her husband vanished. I hope you ain't here to rob me blind, she muttered, pouring whiskey into the wound as he flinched unconscious. 'Cause I barely got beans and bones left to my name. She cleaned him up the best she could, stitching the hole shut with shaking hands. Years ago, Thomas had taught her basic field sewing when he came back from fighting in the war. Funny, how useful pain becomes when the past comes knocking. Hours passed. The rain eased and the fire crackled low. Then, just before dawn, he stirred. His eyes opened, dark, sharp, watching her like a cornered wolf. Where am I? He rasped. Safe, she said flatly. For now. He tried to sit, winced, then fell back. You shouldn't have helped me. I know. Their eyes locked, 2 strangers bound by storm and silence. You're Clara May, he said slowly, recognition flickering in his gaze. Your husband was Thomas. Thomas Redden. She stiffened. How do you know that name? He didn't answer. Instead, he said, I'm Jesse Crow. The name hit her like a bullet. This wasn't just any outlaw. This was the Jesse. Crow, youngest brother of the infamous Crow Gang leader, wanted for murder, robbery, and raids across 6 counties. She reached for her revolver, but he didn't flinch. Go ahead, he said softly. Might save us both a heap of trouble. But Clara didn't pull the trigger, because behind Jesse's words, behind the outlaw mask, there was something else. Regret and fear. Something told her Jesse Crow hadn't come here by accident, and maybe, just maybe, he knew something about what really happened to Thomas Redden. Clara didn't sleep that night. Even after Jesse Crow passed out again from blood loss and pain, her eyes stayed wide open, staring at the ceiling, replaying his words. Your husband was Thomas. Redden. How did an outlaw know her Thomas? As the first light of dawn cut through the rain-soaked curtains, Clara rose and checked his bandages. He was burning with fever, mumbling in his sleep. Names, places, guilt. Should have told him. Before the ambush. Clara's fingers froze. Ambush, she leaned in closer. Didn't know they'd kill him? Just wanted the map? Map? She sat back slowly, heart thudding. Was her husband's death not a robbery? Not random, but planned. She watched Jesse's face twist with pain, regret etched deep in his features. He wasn't faking it. Whatever haunted him ran deeper than any bounty. Later, as the sun climbed higher, Jesse woke, weak but alert. Clara handed him water. You said my husband's name, she said coldly. Start explaining. Jesse stared into the cup. Silent. I don't have time for games, Clara snapped. You're bleeding in my house, Jesse Crow. You owe me the truth. He met her gaze. Your husband. He had something my brother wanted. A map to gold veins out in Black Hollow. Said it came from an old Cheyenne prospector. Clara's lips parted. She remembered the folded paper Thomas kept hidden in his boot. Said it was worthless, just a story. He never told me it was real, she whispered. It was, Jesse replied, and we followed him, not to kill, just scare him. But... My brother. He never cared for clean deals. Clara's face drained of color. You were there, she said, barely breathing. The night he died. Jesse looked away. I tried to stop it, Clara. Swear to God. But when the shot was fired, it was too late. She stepped back, fury rising in her chest. All these years, and you just show up now? I was running, from my past, from my brother, but now he's dead, and they're hunting me. Why? Jesse's voice dropped low. Because I took something they wanted. Something your husband died for. He reached into his coat, slowly, and pulled out a folded, dirt-stained map. Clara's knees nearly buckled. It was Thomas's map. He had it all along, alive or dead. Her husband had been betrayed. And now, 5 years later, the truth was, bleeding on her couch. The map trembled in Clara's hands. So it was real. The gold Thomas spoke of, the one he said would change their lives. It wasn't just a dream. It was a death sentence. Jesse watched her closely, like a man expecting a bullet instead of mercy. I could turn you in, she said quietly, folding the map. Sheriff's just 2 miles from here, a rope with your name on it. You could, Jesse agreed. And maybe you should. But Clara didn't move. Instead, she lit the fireplace and tossed the map into a metal box, locking it tight. Her fingers trembled, not from fear, from awakening. She had lived too long in grief, too long in silence. Now she had a reason to ask questions, to seek justice. I'm not done with you, she said. You're going to tell me everything. From the beginning. But before Jesse could answer, a sound outside froze them both. Footsteps. Crunching gravel. Then, a knock. Clara stiffened. Not heavy like Jesse's. This one was calm. Slow, deliberate. She peeked through the curtain. A tall man in a black duster stood on her porch. Wide hat, clean boots, no horse in sight. Strange, too clean for a traveler, too calm for a neighbor. Clara grabbed her revolver and opened the door just a crack. Can I help you? She asked, voice steady. The man smiled. Good morning, ma'am. Name's Boone. I'm looking for someone. Young fella, mid-30s, bit rough around the edges. Might have passed this way last night. Seen him? Clara shook her head. Haven't seen a soul since the storm. Boone nodded slowly, eyes scanning her face like he could smell the lie. Storm sure made a mess. Shame if anyone got lost in it. His smile never reached his eyes. Then, without another word, he tipped his hat and walked away. Not toward town, but toward the woods. Clara shut the door fast and turned to Jesse. His face was pale. That was Boone, he muttered. He's not Law, he's worse. Bounty hunter? Clara guessed. Jesse shook his head. No, he's a collector. He doesn't just catch men, he makes them disappear. Outside, the wind picked up again. But this time, it carried more than dust. It carried danger, and it had Clara's name on it. Jesse sat up with a groan, sweat beading on his forehead. Boone's voice still echoed in Clara's ears. Polite, calm, but laced with death. We have to go, Jesse said, urgency tightening his tone. He doesn't knock twice. Clara shook her head. I can't just leave everything. You stay, Jesse warned. You die. And I'm not dragging your body next to mine through the woods. His words weren't cruel, just real. Clara looked around the room, the chipped teacups, Thomas's old rifle above the mantel, the rocking chair that hadn't moved in 5 years. Everything here was memory, but memories don't stop bullets. She moved. In 10 minutes, she had packed a satchel with hard biscuits, ammo, and the locked box with the map inside. Jesse, despite the pain, managed to get on his feet, leaning on the wall like a man walking through fire. As they stepped outside, Clara paused. The air was still. No birds, no breeze. Just the weight of eyes watching from unseen shadows. They crossed the field, heading toward the ridge trail that led to the old mining tracks. If they could reach Hollow Creek by sundown, they might find cover, but 5 minutes out, Jesse stopped. Something's wrong. Clara followed his gaze, fresh boot prints in the mud, deep, large, and next to them, the mark of a cane. Boone? She whispered. Jesse nodded. He's not just tracking us, he's hurting us. What does that mean? It means he wants us scared, wants us running, because where we're going, he turned toward the hills. He'll be waiting. And just then, a gunshot cracked through the silence. A tree splintered inches from Clara's head. They ducked. Jesse dragged her into the brush, clutching his side. We run now, he hissed, or we die right here. They ran. Not just from bullets, but from a past that refused to stay buried. The trees swallowed them whole. They ran till Clara's lungs burned, till Jesse collapsed against a fallen log, clutching his stitched side. Blood seeped through the cloth. Again, but he gritted his teeth and nodded toward a thicket ahead. There. Cabin. My brother's old stash spot. Never registered. No one'll look. The shack was half buried in moss and memories. Hidden behind fallen pines, it looked more like a ghost than a shelter. Inside, it smelled of dust, pine oil, and old secrets. Clara bolted the door. Only then did she let her hands shake. Jesse slumped into a chair, face pale but eyes burning. I promised you the truth, he said, and I'll give it now. But it won't bring peace, Clara, just more fire. She sat across from him, revolver in her. Lap, start talking, Jesse exhaled slow. His voice dropped low, steady, but full of weight. That night, we weren't supposed to kill him. We were just meant to scare him, rough him up so he'd give us the map. My brother Hank led the charge. 5 of us. I tried to hold back. Stay in the trees. I liked your husband, Clara. He was tough, fair, smart. Clara's jaw clenched. But Hank, Jesse continued, eyes darkening. He didn't like smart men. Said Thomas gave him lip. Next thing I know, Hank's pulling. A pistol, I yelled. Tried to stop him. He looked away. 1 shot. That's all it took. Tears burned Clara's eyes, but she didn't let them fall. I found Thomas an hour later, Jesse went on. Laid in the mud, still breathing. Barely. Clara's heart skipped. What? Jesse nodded slowly. I dragged him under a fallen cart, hid him best I could. Then I ran, rode off before Hank could realize. Next morning, I came back. He paused, but Thomas was gone. Clara's breath caught. You mean he might have survived? I don't know, Jessie whispered. But there was no blood trail, no body, just his boot prints, headed east. Clara stood, trembling. All these years, and Thomas might have been alive, might still be. But before the thought could settle, Jessie stiffened. A sound outside. Not footsteps. A bell. A small metal bell tied to the branch above the door. Their eyes met. Boone had found them. The bell stopped ringing. Silence returned, but it was the kind that screams before a storm. Clara reached for her rifle, eyes fixed on the door. Jessie moved slow, cocking his pistol with trembling fingers. His wound was opening again, blood spreading fast. Clara whispered, "Back room! Hide! I'm not leaving you! Now, Jessie!" He vanished into the shadows. Seconds later, the door creaked open. Clara stood tall, but it wasn't Boone who stepped in. It was someone older, slender build, a limp in his walk, wide-brimmed hat pulled low, but his voice, it was calm, familiar. You always were braver than he deserved. Clara narrowed her eyes. Who the hell are you, the man? Lifted his head, steel-gray beard, cold blue eyes. Name's Elijah Crow, he said. Jessie's father. Clara froze. Elijah walked in like he owned the air, glancing around the dusty cabin. I built this place, he muttered. Back when men fought for land with shovels, not bullets. He looked at Clara. I came for the map, and to clean up. My son's mess. Clara cocked her rifle. You're too late. Elijah smiled. Child, I'm never late. From behind the walls came a sound. Metal on wood. Clara spun, but she was too slow. Another figure burst through the back window, a younger man with a scar down his jaw. He grabbed Jessie, slammed him against the wall. Clara screamed, fired, missed by inches. Elijah didn't flinch. Now, let's not waste bullets. I don't want Jessie dead. Not yet. Jessie struggled, blood on his lips. You sent Boone. Elijah nodded. Of course I did. He finds. I finish. Clara raised her rifle again. You're not leaving with that map. Elijah stepped closer. Sweet girl. The map is just paper. But what it leads to? That's power. Enough gold to buy towns, judges, whole counties. He leaned in, whispering. Thomas knew that. That's why he ran with it. That's why he faked his death. Clara's heart stopped. What did you say? Elijah grinned. You think your husband died that night? He chuckled darkly. He struck a deal with us, took the gold, vanished. Clara's hands trembled. Lies. They had to be lies. But something inside her cracked. What if it was true? What if Thomas was never a victim, but part of it all? Clara didn't lower her rifle. Couldn't. Her heart was thudding like hooves on hard dirt. Elijah Crow's words echoed in her ears. Thomas faked his death. He struck a deal. It couldn't be. Jessie groaned against the wall, his face pale, the younger thug pressing a knife against his throat. Clara's mind raced. She had seconds. Then she remembered. The lantern. Quick as a lightning strike, she spun and shot the oil lamp hanging above the doorway. Flames burst. Wood caught fire instantly. Smoke filled the cabin. Jessie used the distraction, slammed his head back into his captor's nose, sending the man stumbling. Clara fired again, this time hitting the man in the leg. He dropped. Elijah didn't even blink. You think fire scares me, girl? Clara grabbed Jessie, helped him up. No, she spat, but it'll slow you down. They shoved out the back door, coughing through smoke, stumbling into the woods as fire licked the walls behind them. They didn't stop till they reached a creek half a mile down. Jesse collapsed by the water. Clara knelt, trying to stop the bleeding. Again, "You okay?" Jesse coughed, laughing weakly. "Define okay." Clara tried to focus, but Elijah's words still clawed at her brain. "You knew," she said, voice low. "Didn't you?" Jesse looked at her. "Knew what?" "That Thomas might have betrayed me. That he made a deal." Jesse hesitated. "Too long." Clara stood. "You knew." "I wasn't sure," Jesse said quickly. "I heard whispers. After that night, rumors started. Elijah bragged about a double-cross. I thought he was lying. I wanted him to be lying." Clara's world tilted. All this time she had mourned a good man, a loyal man, but what if she'd been loving a ghost? Built on lies? She turned away, fists clenched. "I need to find him," she said. "If he's alive, I want the truth, from his mouth." Jesse sat up. "I'll help you, but you need to know something else." "What now?" He looked her dead in the eyes. "Elijah doesn't want." "The map, he has it," Clara froze. "What?" Jesse nodded. "That box you locked? He swapped it at your house. Boone's distraction? It was just cover. He's already heading to the mine." Clara's blood ran cold. "Elijah's not just after gold," Jesse said. "He's after what's buried under it." "What does that mean?" Jesse's voice dropped. "It means Thomas lied about more than just the treasure." The mine sat like a scar in the earth, half swallowed by vines. Rusted tracks led into its throat like veins feeding a beast. Clara stood at the edge, rifle gripped tight. Jesse limped behind her, face pale, but fire in his eyes. "Elijah's already inside," he said. "I saw the fresh tracks, and he's not alone." Clara's voice was ice. "Then we don't wait." They lit a lantern, stepped inside. The air changed. Thick, cold, damp like a coffin sealed tight. Every footstep echoed. Like it didn't belong. Cobwebs clung to the beams. Water dripped from the stone. Deeper. A narrow tunnel split 3 ways. Jesse pointed left. "That one leads to the old vault chamber. That's where the gold was hidden. Before the war ended it all." They took the path. The silence was heavier. "Here." Then, a whisper, not words, just breathing. Clara raised her rifle. Around the bend, they saw him. Elijah, kneeling. Torchlight danced across the stone walls, revealing what he'd found. Not gold. Bones. Human bones. Dozens. Maybe more. Laid out in rows. Small crates stacked nearby, marked with government stamps and sealed with wax. Jesse gasped. "This ain't no treasure." Clara stepped forward. "Elijah," she said. He turned slowly. His face wasn't angry. It was satisfied. "You came," he said. "Good. You should see what your husband died for." Clara raised her gun. "You said he ran with the gold." Elijah laughed. "Gold was a cover, a myth we spread to hide what was really buried here." He motioned to the crates. Government secrets, war plans, names of traitors, maps of hidden routes, Fort Knox inventory logs, stuff worth more than any gold. Clara blinked. "And Thomas?" Elijah stood. "He knew. That's why he vanished. He planned to trade these secrets to the highest bidder." Clara's voice cracked. "That's a lie." Elijah stepped closer. "No, girl. That's legacy." Behind her, Jesse whispered, "Clara, the crates, they're booby-trapped." Elijah smirked. "I never said you'd leave with the truth." He reached for a fuse box mounted to the wall and lit the wire. Flames sparked. Clara screamed, and the mine shook. The fuse screamed fire. Flames raced down the wire toward the crates. Clara grabbed Jesse. "Run!" The tunnel behind them exploded. Rocks rained down. The ceiling cracked. Dust swallowed light. Clara fell hard, ears ringing. Jesse crawled to her, coughing blood. They weren't dead. Not yet. "Elijah!" Clara shouted. No answer, only the echo of a collapsing world. They turned, limped deeper into the mine. No choice left. The main exit was gone. Darkness closed in. The lantern flickered. That's when they saw him, standing in the shadows, coat torn, beard thick, face half covered in soot. But Clara knew that face. The voice came low, broken, real. Clara? Her knees buckled. Thomas? Jessie froze. It was him, alive, standing at the edge of the firelight like a ghost pulled from her worst memory. Clara staggered forward. How are you alive? Thomas didn't move. I had to disappear. I didn't want them to find you. Her voice cracked. You let me think you were dead for 6 years. I had to. Why? He stepped closer. His eyes weren't soft. They were sharp, cold. Because I took something from Elijah, he said. And I wasn't planning to share. Clara backed away, breath caught in her throat. Jessie drew his pistol. You lied to everyone. Thomas looked at him. Then Clara. Clara, there's no time. The rest of the mine is wired. Elijah wanted to bury the truth. I want to escape with it. He held up a leather satchel, bursting with maps, files, names. Come with me, he said. You deserve to know what they hid, what this country really did. Clara stared at him, at the man she buried in her heart, who had become a stranger. Tell me one thing, she said. Did you love me? Thomas didn't blink. I loved what we had. But love doesn't last, Clara. Survival does. That was it. Final break. Jessie raised his gun. Thomas vanished into the tunnels just as another blast ripped through the mine. The mine shook again. This time, it felt like the earth itself was splitting. Clara grabbed Jessie, pulling him toward a narrow passage. Dust rained down, making it harder to breathe. The air thick with smoke and fear. Behind them, the roar of the mine's collapse grew, louder. The tunnel ahead seemed like the only way out, but it was dark, claustrophobic. Jessie's side was bleeding again, the wound reopening. His breath ragged, but his eyes were set. Focused. Move, Clara, he shouted. It's not over. Yet! They ran, footsteps echoing, every sound amplified in the chaos. The entrance was close. Clara could feel the cool air creeping in, the fresh breeze from the surface, but every step felt heavier. The tunnel narrowed, and then, ahead, a silhouette. Thomas. Standing still in the shadows, like a man waiting to die. Clara's heart dropped! Thomas! She screamed. Get out of there! He didn't move. Elijah's not done, Thomas called back. The mine's set to collapse. You'll never make it out unless... Before he could finish, the walls shuddered. Another explosion. The ceiling caved in. A wall of rock and dust blocked their path. Clara's eyes went wide. We're trapped! Jessie stumbled, but Clara held on to him, tugging him toward the last possible exit. They reached it, a crack in the wall barely wide enough for them to squeeze through. Jessie pushed first, then Clara, as the mine shook again, the very ground beneath them giving way. Behind them, a final explosion sounded. Thomas was still out there, but Clara didn't have the strength to look back. They scrambled, up the dirt and rocks, climbing out of the mine's grasp. Minutes later, they were out, gasping for air, covered in dirt and dust, but alive. Jessie collapsed next to her, face pale. I thought we weren't going to make it. Clara looked back at the smoking mine, the place that had almost buried them, almost claimed their lives. Thomas is gone, she said, her voice hollow. And Elijah, he's never going to stop. Jessie turned his head toward her. Clara, you still don't get it, do you? Her brow furrowed. Get what? Jessie's voice dropped. Elijah's game isn't about the gold, it's about control. And Thomas, he looked down. Thomas knew it. Clara shuddered. Then what? Now? She asked. Jesse's eyes darkened. We fight. 3 days passed. Clara and Jesse recovered in a hidden cabin near the ridge. Jesse's wounds were bandaged, but the real pain ran deeper. Neither of them talked much, until a letter came, slipped under the door. No sender, just Clara's name. She opened it, hands trembling. Inside, one photograph, a group of men, in army. Uniforms Elijah, Thomas, 2 U.S. senators. And, Clara gasped, her father. The note below read, Morrison wasn't just the mayor, he was one of them. That's why he wanted the mine sealed. Jesse leaned over her shoulder. Your father knew about the secrets, he said. He helped cover it up. Clara's world spun. My whole life, she whispered. Everything he built, this town, it's all a lie. Jesse nodded grimly. Elijah wasn't working alone. He had government help. He still does. Clara stood, rifle in hand, her voice steady. Then we burn it down. All of it. Every lie. Every secret. Jesse smirked. Now you sound like me. They rode into town that night. Dust in the air. Moonlight sharp as a blade. They didn't go to the sheriff. Didn't go to the church. They went straight to the records hall, the building her father once ran. Inside, in the back room, Clara used a crowbar to rip open a hidden compartment in the floorboards. Inside, folders, dozens, maybe hundreds, documents stamped confidential, maps, names, bribes, murders, cover-ups, proof. They barely had time to react. The door burst open. Elijah stood there, hat low. Rifle ready. A dozen men behind him, he stepped forward slow. Confident. Well, he drawled. Didn't expect you two to crawl out of that mine. Clara didn't flinch. You should have made sure we were dead. Elijah smiled. Oh, I will. He raised his rifle. Then, crack! A shot rang out from the balcony above. Elijah's hat flew off. He dove for cover. Jesse shouted, Go! They grabbed the documents and ran, but now they weren't running from the truth. They were running with it, and Elijah was just getting started. The town slept, but Clara and Jesse didn't. They rode under moonlight, saddlebags heavy with documents. Their destination, Lincoln Post, a small printing press 2 towns over. One of the last free presses in the region. We give them this, Jesse said, and the truth spreads. Clara nodded. Even if it kills us. Behind them, shadows moved. Elijah's men, tracks in the dirt. They were gaining. By dawn, they reached Lincoln Post. The owner, an old man with ink-stained fingers, read through the files with trembling hands. This is treason, he whispered. If even half of this is true. It is, Clara said. Every word. He stared at her. I'll print it, but you better pray I live long enough to finish. As the press roared to life, Clara and Jesse prepared for the worst. They set traps, barred the doors, loaded every round they had. By noon, the town was under siege. Elijah rode in with 20 men, guns drawn, faces cold. This ends now, Clara, he shouted from the street. Clara stood on the roof. Then come get me. The shootout began. Bullets flew. Windows shattered. Smoke rose. Jesse took a shot to the arm but kept firing. Clara moved like lightning, sharp, fast, fearless. Elijah's men dropped one by one, but Elijah himself? Nowhere, until, Clara! She turned. He was inside. Gun to the printer's head. Elijah's eyes were wild. You think exposing me will fix this place? The mine, the secrets, your father. They built this town. Clara stepped forward, rifle lowered. They built it on lies, Elijah snarled. And what will you build? A widow's vengeance? She didn't answer. She just pulled the trigger. The shot echoed like thunder. Elijah dropped. The printer fell to his knees, alive, shaking. Silence returned. Clara stood over Elijah's body and whispered, You buried my husband. You won't bury the truth. The paper hit every porch by sunrise. Corruption beneath the dust, the gold, the mine, the lies, names, files, proof. Elijah's body was carried off quietly. No ceremony. His men disappeared. The sheriff resigned. Clara walked the streets of Dry Creek with a storm behind her eyes. People stared. Some thanked her. Others turned away. No one dared challenge her. But she wasn't done. Not yet. At sunset, a rider approached from the North Trail. Dust cloud behind him. The horse was gray. The rider wore black. He dropped something at Clara's feet and rode off. Without a word. She looked down. A worn satchel, Thomas's. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside, a notebook, scrawled with codes, notes, and one message written just 2 days earlier. Clara, the truth is bigger than Elijah. I didn't die in that mine. I walked out the back way. You exposed the dirt. Now they'll come for you too. Run, or meet me in Hollow Valley. One last time. T. Her breath caught in her throat. Jesse stepped beside her. You think it's real? She nodded slowly. That was his handwriting. Jesse looked east, toward the jagged hills of Hollow Valley. It could be a trap. Clara stared at the notebook. Or it could be justice. She didn't hesitate. That night, under a full moon, Clara packed her rifle, kissed Jesse goodbye, and rode alone. Toward Hollow Valley. Toward the end of the road, or maybe the beginning. Hollow Valley was a graveyard of whispers. Clara stood face to face with Thomas, the man she once mourned, now alive, yet unfamiliar. You let me believe you were dead, she said, voice shaking. I buried your clothes. I buried my heart. Thomas looked down. I did die, Clara, just not the way you think. The man you loved. He had to disappear, or you'd be next. She stepped closer, eyes blazing. And Elijah, my husband's blood is on your hands too. You may not have pulled the trigger, but you lit the fuse. Thomas sighed, pulling a time-worn journal from his coat. This book, it has the coordinates to the vault beneath the mine. That's where it all began, and where it must end. He offered it to her, but Clara didn't reach for it. Why now? She asked. Why come back? Thomas finally looked her in the eye. Because you're the only one strong enough to finish what we started. Silence hung. Then, he moved. 2. Fast. His hand dropped to his side. She didn't wait. Bang! The shot echoed across the valley. His revolver dropped into the dust. Clara's hand didn't tremble. She hadn't killed him, but she'd come close, enough to make a point. Thomas stood frozen. You haven't changed, he murmured. No, she replied. But I've finally become what this town needed me to be. She stepped forward, took the journal, and turned, her back to him. Mounting her horse, she glanced over her shoulder. I'll go back into that mine. I'll find the vault. And I'll bury the truth so deep into the earth that even God can't unearth the lies again, Thomas called out. Clara, if you do this, they'll never stop hunting you. She paused, then said without looking back, Let them come. And she rode off, into the wind, into the dark, and into legend. The widow who stood against a town built on blood. Her silhouette disappeared into the dawn. But her name was just beginning to be written. If you felt every twist, every shot, every truth in this story, then don't forget to like, comment, and hit that subscribe button. More powerful tales are coming your way, only here on Luminous Tales, because every shadow has a story.